Bethany, you're on mute.
Oh, hey. Okay. Good morning. Hope you all are doing well on this fabulous Friday. Students, first out, thank you so much for joining us really on your day off, just to spend 30 minutes with us. So you can hear from our wonderful guest speaker today. So this is Miss Rachel Curell, and just to really sum up what she does, she's a coding junkie. Her title can be 1,001 different things, but that's really what it boils down to. She's fabulous. She's wonderful. She's been coding for years. She currently works for Wells Fargo and has been for a long time. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the show over to her. I'm going to share my screen so we can have her presentation up. And please just think about questions as we go along. And when we get towards the end, either share your questions in the chat, or B, feel free to raise your hand and turn on your camera so she can see your beautiful face and speak with her directly. So, Miss Rachel, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'll go ahead and get your presentation up.
Okay, can you hear me? Let's start with that one.
Yes, yes.
Okay, excellent. Yes. So, good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. My name is Rachel Curell. I am a programmer. A programmer can be referenced with several different titles, but most of what I do all day long is write code or go to meetings about writing code. And so that makes my job pretty fun, actually. So we'll hop down to the next slide.
Okay. Sorry, I had to restart.
No, you're good.
Okay.
It's all good. So it's just a very high level agenda. I want to tell you what an application developer / programmer is, talk with you what a day, one of my days looks like, and then talk about what it takes to become the kind of programmer that I am, and how you can get from middle school or high school to college or trade school to get to a programming career. And so on the next slide. Is, what is an application developer / programmer, right? So when someone says I'm a programmer, it's such a broad term. That's like saying, oh, look at the stars in the sky. Well, yeah, depending on where you are, there are different stars in any given time of the year or different places on the planet. And there are so many different ways to be a programmer. You could be a programmer that programs cars, refrigerators, the laptops you're all sitting in front of, Google Docs, camera software. There's all kinds of programmers. There's not one programmer who knows it all. We all specialize in very specific types of programming. And so if you want to be a programmer, you got to find the type of programming that you love. And you'll know it because you'll be able to do all of the things that you see on this slide. You'll be able to create things that other people can't. You'll be able to solve problems with it. People will think you're working miracles, and really you're just putting the bits and bytes together in a way that someone else hadn't thought of. And that is truly what a programmer is. It's looking at a piece of software or looking at a piece of technology and saying, I could make that do this and it would be better. And if you can think like that, then perhaps being a programmer or an application developer is for you. So the next slide is actually just kind of a dig at the geeks of the world, right? Because everybody thinks that all programmers are dudes and all programmers have to be, as successful as Microsoft and Facebook and all of this. But that's actually not true at all. More than half of the programmers that I work with are women. Many of them are foreign. And many of them work from their home country at this point. So it's not just a guys only sort of thing. It is, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're weird or that you're socially inept. It really just means that you like solving puzzles and you like solving them in a way that solves them for lots of people. And that really is kind of the gist of it. If you go to the next slide, you'll see some interesting pictures of two of the very first coders. And, the Ada Lovelace, I just love her story. And so if you're not familiar with her story, I encourage you to Google that and read up on her, because some of her mathematical algorithms that she came up with they started it all. And if you have not seen that wonderful movie called Hidden Figures, I would definitely recommend taking a look at that. And then there's a much older fun movie, I believe, with Matthew Broderick in it called War Games, and that is also a fun look at some of the extremities of programming and what can go wrong or right, depending on your opinion. So definitely take a look at those individuals. So what do all programmers have? And we do all have these things. We are absolutely determined and gritty, meaning that if you give me a problem that others have been unable to solve, I'm going to bang on that problem until my eyes turn red. And I'm probably a couple of days into digging through possible solutions. We don't believe that anything is impossible with the right amount of time and focus and budget. So given the right amount of time and focus and the internet, we can solve just about any problem. We do not give up easily, which makes for interesting conference calls when we're trying to come up with the best solution, because of course everybody will think theirs is the best. And usually the best is a combination of multiple individuals' ideas. A hunger for learning. I have been a programmer now since 1990 early, a while. I've been a programmer for a while, and I've had to learn multiple languages, not like French or Spanish, but literally the ability to speak English to a computer. So different computer languages. I guess I've probably learned 30 or 40 computer languages in the time that I've been a programmer. Right now, on any given day, I write in probably 6 different languages, depending on which project I'm writing code for. So if you don't like to learn, programming is probably not for you. If you like constantly learning new things, like, I mean, just think about, the code for your cell phone. All the different types of phones, all the different apps that people build, all the different languages you can build them in. It's absolutely limitless. And you can become an expert in one and then decide, you know what, tomorrow I think I'm going to just rewrite this whole thing in a different language and start it over. And usually if you do that, you get better and better. We are highly creative individuals. A lot of us are either musicians or artists. It's not unheard of to find programmers that have a passion for something other than writing code that has some artistic hook to it. But we are analytical thinkers, meaning that we can think about a problem and we can break it down into steps. If any of you have ever done the activity where you explain to someone how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, that's one of my favorites. You can tell very quickly who has the mindset of a programmer by just how granular the steps become, and how much that programmer assumes or does not assume about what you know about making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So the analytical thinkers usually make fantastic programmers. Next slide, please.
Whoop, hang on.
No problem.
It cut off.
I talk too much on that slide. That's what it's saying.
You're good.
Talk faster.
There we go.
Okay. So the real skills are truly that not everyone can think in logical steps, and not everyone can solve puzzles all day long. I have relatives who are going absolutely bonkers with the whole idea of being from home all this time. But for developers, other than, the occasional exercise outside or yard work or maybe going on a hike or a bike ride, we can solve puzzles all day long and it never gets old. And we can focus for hours. If you've ever gotten lost in Minecraft, Minecraft, by the way, an excellent tool to learn how to write code in. If you can get lost in Minecraft for a couple hours at a time, programming might be something that you'd like to look into. That next one's kind of funny because not everybody knows who MacGyver is, but it's the kind of person that can take a bunch of different parts and make them into something that was never expected by the original parts. And what I mean by that is, you have at this point cars that have displays on them, but those displays started as these huge televisions hooked up to very old computers, right? And so somebody thought somewhere along the line, wouldn't it be great if my car had a screen display in it? And so they took one piece of technology and used it somewhere else for something similar, but with different with different purpose, like navigation and controlling my heat or air conditioning or what channel I'm listening to on the radio. So real coders are thinkers and readers and communicators, but above all, they are artists. And I think it's fun to be able to tell all of you on the phone at this point that should coding be taught in the school system, it really needs to be taught exactly or very similarly to the way art is taught, in that there isn't always a right answer to a piece of code. I mean, it's like if you painted a landscape with paints or crayons or colored pencils or pastels, something. There are all sorts of different possibilities on how to solve a problem. And that's why I feel very strongly about that one, that developers, more than anything, we are artists. Next slide, please. Okay, so a day in a life, what does it look like? And you'll notice I crossed out drive to work and drive home because, of course, most programmers are working from home full time right now. But we get up, we eat breakfast, we check our email, probably over a cup of coffee, which I'm still having some of mine. We go to meetings and we write code, and that's what we do all day long. And I am a mom. At the end of the day, I do have 2 boys, and somewhere in there, I have to get my chores done and play with the dog and do my exercise and all of that. So it can be a challenge to do the work-life balance thing. But I would say close to 45, 50% of my day, I'm in meetings. And if I'm not in meetings talking about code, I am somewhere writing code and focused in on the code that I'm writing. And then all of those other things happen. And so, yeah, this is actual code. And let me zoom in on my copy so I can tell which code I sent you, because I honestly can't read that. All right, excellent. So what I sent you on the left, so the behind screen, that is a combination of Razor Engine and C# and HTML. And then the closer shot is actually JavaScript and jQuery. And let's see, those would be different objects, and we have an initialize object and some other functions that initialize object can call. And so, yes, this is stuff that I look at every single day. As a matter of fact, the project that this is from is one of my main projects. If I were to say how much time do I spend in a day on this specific project, of the time that I'm coding, it's more than half is spent on this. And so in this project, there are there are about 7 different languages that are in the different pages of this project. So you're looking right now at a total of 3 of them. And there are 4 others, including how we access the data, something called link to SQL and link to entities, SQL, SQL, which you don't see here. And then there's a bunch of unit testing logic, as well as good old fashioned style sheets. So the way things look, is it red? Is it blue? Is it green? Is it big font, little font? All of those things matter and are controlled by code. So what does an application developer make? So I put this slide in here so that you could have a basic understanding of the salary that developers can expect to make. And so I don't know if, can you even pull that up?
I'm going to try. Let me see.
Look at you. Yeah.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a second and pull it up, and I'll reshare so we can get it.
So when you look at the world today, while you're pulling that up, I'll just keep going. So when you look at the world today and you look at what jobs are available to you, right? Like if you guys are high schoolers and you're, sophomores, juniors, seniors, you're looking at getting a first job. A lot of individuals, their first job, you're talking about flipping burgers, or you're at the grocery store, or you're down at the car wash, and you're just trying to get the experience. You want to prove that you can show up, that you can be on time. And those kinds of jobs absolutely get you started. But once you're ready to take the leap into a career, which is different than just getting a job, if you want a career, this type of career, programming, is extremely lucrative. It pays very well. The benefits are usually fantastic. It does come with some downsides, and I'll talk with you just a minute about what those are. But as you can say, the bottom on this chart, and this is recent numbering, the bottom salary on this chart is 54,800. So between 53 and 55,000 just to start out. And that's if you barely know one or two languages, right? Maybe three languages. Maybe you're good at web pages, right? And so for a lot of people, they look at those numbers, and that's a very comfortable living. And if that's part of what you want in your career, is that you want to be guaranteed a very comfortable living, then this is a good career for you. As long as you can, do all of the things that we've mentioned previously, like focus, like, constantly be learning. I think it's interesting what they have in the upper right-hand corner, that growth is down 7%. And I want you to know something about that. That depends on where you live and what type of programming you are doing. Let me give you an example. Right now, driving a gasoline-powered car is kind of going out of style. Electric cars are so popular right now, right? So if you took a bunch of programmers and asked, do you program gasoline cars or do you program electric cars? The gasoline car guys would probably say, well, I haven't had a good raise or a good long gig in quite a while, because it's hard for me to find a job, maybe because I haven't learned the electrical side of the house, right? But if you're an electrical car programmer, that number is exploding right now, right? If you are a hospital software programmer that programs the lung pumping, heart pumping machine, right? You're probably in high demand right now, right? Because we have to turn out more equipment to be able to help with the pandemic, right? Let's talk about funny ones. The guys that have come up with the robot that will cut your grass or vacuum your floors, right? Underneath all of that, there is code, right, that's being written, right? It's either, it could be Java, it could be C++, it could be Python, right? And so any of those languages, you go back and forth. Is it really a decrease? Maybe not. Depends on what you're a programmer of. So back to our slides. Yeah. So that was what you could expect to make. And then how can you make code into a career? Okay. So that first bullet, just try to wrap your head around that, because that's absolutely true. There are more types of coding jobs than there are schools in Cabarrus County. I would almost say there are more types of coding jobs than there are probably students in Cabarrus County schools, because everything is being driven by code. Just look at your phone and look at all the different apps that make your phone work, and there's a specialty behind all of them. At minimum, you have to get through middle school, you have to get through high school, and you have to have one of the things in that parenthesis set. I want you to notice that a 4-year bachelor's degree from an institution of higher learning, some university or college, that is no longer actually required It used to be, I would say 20 years ago, it used to be. But we found, and I have found just in the ones that I've hired recently, that individuals who have an associate's degree, which is the 2-year degree, or the certificate base from a for-profit boot camp like educational experience is also very effective. And usually what you'll see when you go to talk with someone about trying for a programming job, one of the first things they're going to do is give you a little project. They're going to say, okay, how would you solve this problem? And they're going to see what code you come back with. And that'll be the first test that you'll have as to whether or not you qualify for the job, is how you solve the problem. And so how do you make that happen? You study a lot. You read a lot of code. You make a lot of mistakes. And then you fix them and you do it again. And when I used to volunteer at the middle school to teach code, one of the things that we would do is have the students go to their favorite website, just www.whatever, TikTok or Facebook. I know that's old people stuff now, but the sports, NFL, NBA, hockey, go to your favorite website and look at how they wrote it and try to write it that way yourself, right? Go take what someone has done and make it your own. And then experience is the key. The more code you write, the better you will get. I don't have a day that goes by that I do not write a line of code. Even if it's a day that I'm not required to deliver a piece of code, I will be going to read or write some sort of code, because you snooze, you lose, right? If you don't practice it, you forget it. And you really do have to love it. If you do not love it, this is not the career for you, definitely. Solving problems and reading code and fixing things that people think, gosh, how would you ever fix that? Those are the types of problems that really get us excited. So we love to solve problems, and we love to solve them with code. Next slide is a lot of fun, and I did want to show you guys some of these because I have them with me. So here's, wait, let me get the camera angle right for you guys. All right, so here's Learn to Program with Minecraft by the same guys that wrote JavaScript for Kids. I have read both of these. They're so much fun. And then there's another really good book that anyone who tries out for my team, we actually ask them, have you read this? And if you haven't, you have to go read it before the day that you start if you get the job. And that is Clean Code. You have to understand what it means to write clean code, not messy code. And if you have ever written a paper for an English teacher and they've come back and said, this was a little too messy, I'm going to give you a C, you need to go clean it up. That's exactly the same principle. So code, there's there's a concept of writing messy code and a concept of writing clean code, and we write clean code. Where can you learn? All of those places. Khan Academy is fantastic. W3 schools, again, fantastic. Most of the major languages you would ever need to learn, you could get from one of those two. The other two are paid services, but you can get a 30-day free trial. And my team, my personal team at Wells Fargo, we use the third bullet and the second bullet. So we use W3 schools and we use Pluralsight. And I personally use JavaScript for Kids whenever I'm volunteering in the schools, because the projects in it are so much fun. They really are a lot of fun to code. Next slide. And thank you. And questions?
All right. Thank you so much, Rachel. Very informing. So we're going to open the Q&A up to students now. We did have one student who said they loved MacGyver. And then Miss Money had put in those links from her presentation in the chat. So yes, students, if you want to raise your hand, and please turn on your camera so Miss Rachel can see you and ask your question, or feel free to put it in the chat. And of course, not all at once, guys, not all at once. We really liked your example too about the electric car versus the gas car. And I think understanding that, I think naturally some students think like, you know, there is a ton of coding jobs out there, but it's amazing the supply and demand, you know, how it really impacts the type of coding that's there.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question, Rachel.
Hey, how are you?
So every time I listen to you, I learn something new. So here's my question. So I bank at Wells Fargo. So can you give me an example of something that I would have used that you could have possibly been the coder behind it, that I would have used as a consumer?
Sure. Every day people roll up to an ATM machine. And an ATM machine, you put in your information, and based on what you put in, it does certain things. In order for it to do those certain things, it has to be on the Wells Fargo network. Wells Fargo has its very own network. Just like we have the World Wide Web, Wells Fargo has its own network. And just like your computer has something called an IP address, every ATM machine in the world has an IP address. And when you are setting up a new ATM machine and you are an engineer going to a mall or a bank to plug up the machine, the IP address that you got came from software that I wrote. So my software helps Wells Fargo keep track of all of the IP addresses on all of the Wells Fargo network all over the world. So in a branch, there are teller machines and there are outdoor banking machines and there are security cameras and there are alarm systems, and all of those use the network to communicate, and software that my team manages to set up those IP addresses.
Thank you. That makes perfect sense. I just wanted to kind of like be able to think about it next time I'm there. I'll think on you.
There you go. They don't trust me with the money.
That's okay. Me neither.
And Rachel, we have another question from our student London. They asked, oh, I'm sorry. No, they just simply said, I now see that they have hybrids now that are gas and electric.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that would actually be kind of a cool coding experience too.
It would.
Both. Very cool.
What would be the coolest is to think about the logic behind that, right? Like, what is the logic that's used to switch the car back and forth, and what does the code look like to determine, can I be gas or should I be electric, and when do I switch? Think about the decisions that had to be made there. That to me is fun to think about. Very cool.
Very cool. All right. Any other students have some questions? Whether you want to, again, raise your hand and ask these questions, or whether you want to put them in the chat. Anybody? I know it's Friday or what's
it is.
Yeah. Aiden, Jelani, Alex. Oh, Jelani, you got a question? Okay. Yeah, Jelani, you can ask your question. Whoop. Jelani, are you on mute, Jelani?
I was about to type it in the chat, but I'm just gonna ask it right here.
Okay.
So in the future, do you think that like computer programming or most type of programming is gonna be like in high, like those jobs will be in high demand?
Yes, I do. And may I just say that right now, when we go to hire someone and we put out a request and we say, we need to hire a programmer, and that programmer needs, you know, these basic things, it is becoming increasingly harder and harder to find individuals, not just in Charlotte, but in the United States, who have the skills that we need. A lot of our new hires are from other countries, not because we didn't try to hire an American, but because we couldn't find one. And so that for us has been a real struggle. I would love to be able to come into high schools or community colleges or colleges and grab individuals who are thinking about being programmers and say, hey, come on over here and intern with us so that we can hire you as soon as you're done. Because honestly, we're having a really hard time finding quality individuals who love the job and are skilled in the languages we need.
Awesome. Good question, Jelani. London has a question. Do aerospace engineers at NASA have to do some coding to make the spaceships, or is that another job person to do that?
That's an excellent question. So kind of like a trust exercise, when you're standing in a circle and somebody falls and someone's supposed to catch them. When it's your time to be in the center, you're like the astronaut, right? Like you're being sent up, but everybody in the circle around you has been inside the circle and trained, and you know their job and they know your job, right? But again, just like coding, there's so much to know that there will be experts. And if you've ever seen any of those really cool NASA movies where there's all these different individuals sitting at all these different desks, and each person has a specialty. So somebody's in charge of the rocket fuel, and someone's in charge of keeping up with the heart rate of all of the different members of the crew. The members of the crew that are sitting in that cockpit or who are on the space station, they are aware of all of the different systems, and they are aware of how those different systems work. They may not be down into the code and writing every decision, but they are aware and are prepared to expect the system to work a certain way based on parameters. So if I get hot, the suit should help me cool down. If we're running low on rocket fuel, it should make this little thing over here flash red. If we need to level out, I should have a gauge that shows me that. And I should know how to react, and the system should react appropriately, right? So do they know every line of code? No, but do they know how the code should react based on the parameters? Yes, they do.
Very good question.
Yeah, that was a good one.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. Well, with the interest of time, because I don't want to keep everyone much past than what we had promised. First out, thank you so incredibly much, Rachel, for being with us. And students, I'll share out her presentation. And then, of course, if y'all have any additional questions for Rachel, please let us know, and we can put you in touch with Rachel so she can answer those questions for you. And then, Carmen, did you have anything to say about next week or the next few weeks?
No, we just have some great people lined up. We have Dr. Crystal Yazzo, who is a biologist with the EPA, joining us on November 6th, and she's super excited to share some of her journey with us. We have a lead body fabricator coming up November 20th with Joe Gibbs Racing, and then we have Dr. Rachel Goodnight, who is a veterinarian with Banfield Pet Hospital, coming up in December. So we hope you can join us for those sessions as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much again, Rachel. We appreciate it. And students, thank you so much for joining us. And remember to definitely log this if you're a high school student within your student logs for your portfolio so you can get credit. You all have a fantastic Friday and a wonderful weekend.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, thanks, Rachel.